So the book Repeatability, which really is the precursor to this work on the founder mentality, was focused on a very specific question. They have some in the other room, so you might have seen it. But it is focused on the question, what is it about the strategies, not the management techniques and founder mentality, but about the strategies of the companies that seem to be able to have more enduring periods of competitive advantage. And what we found was, not surprisingly, that they were companies that did the same thing, constantly improved over and over. Like, go back to Aristotle, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, does not become an act, but it becomes a habit. So there are 3 design principles of strategies that we call the great repeatable models. And I'm going to tick through these quickly and give you 3 quick examples. The first, without surprise, was focus, simplicity, so that around such a clear form of uniqueness or differentiation that everyone in the company could understand it. Right now, in the world, fewer than 2 in 5 people in the average business say they have any freaking idea what the strategy of their company is, what's most important, or what makes it special. Never let that happen to you. Here's an example, a counterexample. All these examples are good entrepreneur examples. So Olam is a company that we've worked with, I've worked with over the years quite a bit. It's in a low-growth business, taking commodities like cashew nuts from the developing world and selling them to companies like Nestle. So in 1989, it began by actually jumping on a World Bank initiative to encourage entrepreneurs to create hermetically sealed supply chains so that people with guns couldn't take product as it's flowing out as easily, and crooks and corrupt people couldn't take money as it's flowing to the farmers. And they courageously actually did this in cash for cashews in Nigeria in 1989. They were the first to actually station their managers at the farm gate, very differentiated, and to have a hermetically sealed supply chain so they could track every single cashew nut, which no one could ever do before, back to the specific farm. And they developed and codified that so that over time, you can see the time periods below, they could move either into another country with the model they had for cashew nuts, or into another product, shea nuts, in the same country. And they expanded in these adjacent moves, one at a time, one after another, with a repeatable formula that kept getting better and better and better. And today, you can see the value. They were the IPO of the year in about 6 years ago in Southeast Asia, and last year, 2 years ago, Sonny Verghese, the CEO, who was made CEO of the year in Southeast Asia. But to me, this is just a great example of the first principle of focus around a repeatable model that everyone understands. There are many forms of differentiation. We have some tools at Bain, and in the book Repeatability, I won't go through it in detail, but it's much more, I think it's much more subtle than just saying we're low cost, or we're better with customers, or we're a superior innovator, or we're good at managing a portfolio. We actually identified 15 generic forms of differentiation which combine. And so I think it's a useful thing to actually be very self-conscious about managing how you are different than your competitors. You make money, like the airlines, in business by being different and being excellent, not just by being excellent and being the same. Second design principle is what we call the principle of being hardwired directly to the front line and the customer. Now, this sounds obvious to you. So you say, like, hello, duh. But it is amazing how, as strategies evolve into intellectual chessboard concepts created by teams of consultants and planners, very often there is a disconnect between the head and the heart and the hands of businesses. And we are having a much more self-conscious criterion at Bain in our work around the world with thousands of clients on the test of a good strategy, is whether you can actually find in a few frontline routines that people do day after day after day the essence of what makes you unique. I'll just give you one example, which is the one I mentioned before, of AB InBev, going back to Brahma beer in Brazil. And this is just a chart that just shows that sometimes going from strategy to the front line it's very valuable to have an intermediate step of say, all right, what are the 6 or 7 principles of our strategy? So for Vanguard, which we all would know in investing, it would be we focus on small investors, we like loyalty, we don't believe you can beat the market. Those types of principles are very, very powerful in letting people on the front line make decisions. And if you don't, Bain, I would say, has 7 principles of how we behave that even, I think, many of the receptionists to the newest consultant would be able to describe. And that's an amazing, powerful thing to align your business. So as you grow, you might just reflect on whether sometimes it's worth even writing those down and building awards around them. Nike has 11 maxims that they use, and in many, many countries, they give an award to the person who best exemplified each individual maxim. In Australia, I think they have famous athletes give those out each year. So ABI, this is amazing. You know, this is the EBITDA of Ambev, the Brazilian element, and then South American element that grew from 1 brewery to $6 billion of EBITDA. But then the repeatable model was applied when they combined with Interbrew in Europe, and now to Anheuser-Busch. And I think that to do this in profitability, while doing acquisitions, in a world where most acquisitions don't work, does require that the people doing this feel as if they are the owner of the restaurant, the chef, not a waiter who actually likes the fact there are more restaurants in the neighborhood because they have more chances to get work. These are the 10 principles of AB InBev. I won't go through them all, but I just drive you to number 6, under culture. We are a company of owners. Owners take results personally, and they have process after process after process to make this real, not just pages on a yellow-looking slide. One of the routines that they drive their obsession with cost and money in a commodity, relative commodity business is that they actually have a repeatable model that goes all the way back to the days of Ambev in Brazil, where they actually developed the lowest cost brewer in the world. And they are now applying that and actually certifying every one of their 100 breweries every year on these principles. And now they have 99%. And you can see for Ambev how it's increased the margins. And then when they combine with Interbrew, here in a commodity business, they increased 13% the margins in 5 years. And then when they bought Anheuser-Busch, they did the same thing. And this is just an amazing testament to the power of a repeatable model that goes all the way down to the front line. The third principle is the principle we call of adaptation. And there probably is a better way to describe it, but we found that the companies that achieved longer and more enduring success seemed to invest and did invest more in their learning systems. We looked in depth at practices, 200 companies, to figure this out. And let me just show you one example. And it wasn't learning systems from financial data. It usually was learning systems to 1 or 2 really amazingly powerful measures that you can see at the customer or in frontline behaviors or actions. And that almost are define the health of the repeatable model. So this is another founder began business. This is Enterprise Rent-A-Car, which goes back to the 1950s in America. Now it's the largest rental car company by far, and the Taylor family have kept it private. It's the largest, weirdly, the largest hirer of college graduates in the United States. And it is a perfect repeatable model. Whenever their number of cars in a fleet gets to 150, they split it again, hire another college graduate, put them in charge of it. But the reason I use this as an amazing example is that they really, other than financials, have one measure that they obsess on. And they measure it for every one of their 8,000 branches. And they publish it openly in the company. And if you're bad on this measure in your branch, there are no promotions and no bonuses for like the bottom 20%. And this gives a huge incentive to get better. And because their model is so repeatable, they can identify practices and share them. And so that's why on the right-hand side, left-hand side, you see the lowest quartile getting better at a differential rate, even as the whole company has gotten better in this measure of customer loyalty. They call it ESQI. Bain would call it a Net Promoter Score. But it basically is essentially like one question of would you come back? Would you want to do your next rental with Enterprise on a scale of 1 to 10? You know, you could say, well, e.g., Chris, you've talked about 2 things. You talked about these 5 dimensions of the founder mentality. You've talked about 3 elements of repeatable models. This is kind of a listy structure. But I actually think these are intensely self-reinforcing. And if you think about the elements of the founder mentality, I think, and you think then about the elements of what we were thinking at Bain as the definition of great strategy, I think you can see how they're reinforcing, even in a very quick way. You know, if you have a really bold mission, it's quite easy, I think, for people at the front line to know what you are about and to really focus around that. And if you don't, if it's vague, if it's unclear, no. Owner's mindset. You know, if you really maintain that as much as you can, it makes it much easier to really embed into the company, so as Vanguard has, all the way to the front line, the principles that you're trying to. If you have customer advocacy and are really focused on the front line, like let's take Amazon as an example. You know, it's so amazing to me that an online company in the 3 main surveys of customer satisfaction in America comes out #1, and that they return your emails just unbelievably fast and have the best record for customer satisfaction. And I think that is a huge power in understanding the customer, the data that Amazon has access to of many kinds for us, and their ability to adapt versus other retailers. Passion for simplicity obviously helps focus. IKEA would be a prime example. And finally, obsession with talent. You know, I think my son is, I was beginning the job search and talked to some people at Google. He's in the Northeast of the United States. It's a very good bet, so if anyone has a job, please let me know in the Northeast of the United States. But I just graduated from business school. But it was amazing that he said that his and my friends at Google said that still all hires of any significance pass over the desk of the top people in the company. So I think that there is a mutual reinforcement between these elements of great strategy, which push you up to the right-hand side and to a great repeatable model and help resist these wins, and that they're mutually reinforcing. So let me just end with a couple of final thoughts. You know, reflect on these elements as you grow of the founder mentality, and even at your scale, as you begin to scale, these tensions exist. And ask yourself, on these 3 dimensions of a repeatable model, is it time maybe to begin to grade yourself on that and think about it more systematically? We have a sort of a test and some questions on some websites we created at Bain, one called repeatability.com, and then one that we just launched a few days ago, and are now beginning to put blogs about the findings that we're coming up with around the world on the founder mentality. It's foundersmentality.com, which we created and registered. Second, it's very easy in the world where you are so busy not to talk about how you are really differentiated and unique. And as you go into other businesses, to begin to average out. You know, maybe not as much at your scale, but it is amazing to me. I cannot tell you how many management meetings I've been in where I've interviewed the top 12 managers, asked them how they think the company is differentiated and unique, and what are the capabilities that are most important to strengthen and preserve to keep that alive, and that everybody disagrees. You know, it's like a couple that hasn't talked about their relationship in 10 years and has taken it for granted. Third, remember that complexity is the silent killer of profitable growth. The quicker you stay, it's like staying in great physical condition. You know, the sooner that becomes a habit every single day, the less you have to go through cycles of binge and purge. And finally, manage the founder mentality like your most important asset. Probably is. I live in the Netherlands at the moment. It's a country of repeatability. So let me just end here with wishing you repeatable success, and thank you for the privilege today. Thanks.